Good evening and welcome to Britain Today. Today I'm here with former Prime Minister, former leader of the Social Democrats, and now Speaker of the House of Commons, Dean Heathcote. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Lovely to be here.
Well, this has definitely been a little reunion. Me and you always used to do our little interviews together for a while.
Yeah, it's quite nice to be chatting with you again.
Yeah.
At this rate, you're going to be writing my biography, just so you know.
Uh, all right, of course. So Dean, you recently became Speaker of the House of Commons. How have you been handling it?
I've told a lot of people so far that it's so and so. That because that's the best way to describe it. I mean, like as of I've only done two sittings so far. As of when I am exactly saying this, it was a state opening that went fine. Ejected one MP, but it's whatever. Hopefully other MPs will now get the message. And yeah, second sitting legislative, that was fine as well. Got through the bills pretty quickly. Session ended in 45 minutes. Not that the length of a session is necessarily determines the quality of that session, but it's pretty good. So far, again, it's so and so. It's going all right though. I would say overall. I'm looking forward to the future, which we'll probably better discuss in a second, aren't we?
Mm. So, you've been everywhere recently. You've been in the cabinet, you've been in the opposition leader, you've been prime minister. Now you're speaker. So, what's next for Dean Heathcote? Where are you gonna go? What's gonna happen?
I should preface that by saying I've not been in the cabinet since about 2022, but fair enough. Um, didn't really end very well back then. But what was your question there again? So I've already forgotten it.
What's next for you after speakership? What's next after for you?
Oh, next after speaker. Okay. Gotta be honest, haven't decided yet. I want to do speaker for as long as possible. Like, I'll come out here and say it. I don't just want to do one term. I don't want to stop at two. And a part of me doesn't really want to stop at three. I want to do it kind of for as long as I can because I feel like it's the
Emperor
best role
Dean
for
is
me now.
coming back to rule the commons. Emperor Dean's gonna rule the commons.
I
Uh,
wish, but no,
so,
that's the role I want to have. Though I'm enjoying Speaker so far, and I think it's a perfect fit for what I'm capable of these days. Because I mean, I wasn't that comfortable as like a party leader, this year. It didn't feel right. It wasn't great. Hence the resignation. I've gone into details about that in previous interviews, but Speaker, it feels right. And yeah, I'm going to do it for as long as possible. God knows what comes after that. Hopefully, retirement or execution, one of the two.
Recently your party held a party election to elect a new leader. I believe I have his name somewhere. I completely forgot of it. So, can I just ask, do you think the Social Democrats are coming back since, they've seen a bit of a bump in their membership over the past couple of weeks?
I can't talk too much about opinions on parties themselves, but I'll give a comment. Hierarchy, he was my chief whip when I was there briefly in December and January. He seems fine. He's a good lad. I've not really witnessed him a lot in Parliament personally. I've only been back in Parliament since December. Um, before that, didn't not seen him in Parliament, of course, other than like in the galleries and from the visitor area. But haven't really seen him in action, and it'll be really interesting to see what he is like as a third party opposition leader. Um, and to see that interaction between him and Stuart, because both their parties are on 6 seats. Obviously, because I'm speaker, they're down from 7 to 6. But they're on an equal amount of seats. I'm sure there's going to be some battles there. It'll be exciting. My job to keep order, of course. But I think in terms of the Social Democrats themselves, which is obviously the party that I have hailed from, um, more hailed from recently. Um, I think they're seeing a recovery clearly. I think they're obviously trying to rebuild, and that's what opposition is really good for. Opposition is really good, to get a bit of respite and to rebuild and recover. I think Andy has the potential to, see that to completion, see the party potentially to recover some seats at in 2 months' time. But that could all get blown away in 2 weeks. You never know. I mean, politics is ever changing. It ebbs and flows, so anything could happen. Really, Bruce.
Well, uh, Dean, so I wanted to talk about for UK and, the recent more allegations, not only of corruption, but of, mismanagement, not only in Parliament, but also across their party. So, as Speaker, will you always, set the line for all parties to, prevent this kind of behavior in Parliament?
Ultimately, what happens outside of Parliament in terms of the behaviour of members, as long as I'm not seeing that sort of behaviour in the chamber, and as long as it's not demeaning the reputation of the House as a whole, and then it doesn't concern me too much. But obviously, I am raising a bit of an eyebrow at the idea of obviously OCG members being proactive in Parliament and potentially exploiting that position for evil means, I guess, for like a better term. I don't think there is a problem with having those kind of people in the chamber. I think ultimately the Commons has to reflect what the community looks like, and if we are seeing obviously the prevalence of people who enjoy to commit organized crime and yeah, in game of course, and just like shooting up places and whatever, and those people are active and contributing, then fair dues. They ultimately have a voice in the community. They have a vote, although a lot of them got their votes deducted last election because they just acted not so great when campaigning and whatever. Um, but ultimately, they have a voice. They deserve to be represented, and if they are going to be representatives themselves, then they can be. It's not my call to make, but they have to behave. My job as speaker is to make sure that they behave, and if they don't behave, then we're going to be thrown out the chamber quick. And then you can say that long Welsh town's name. I can't say it. I'm sure there's probably a Welshman in the community who can say it though. Send me a voice note, any Welshman who can pronounce that, please. That'd be very funny.
So, as you know, you have been elected speaker. So, tell us exactly what the speaker, does for some of the newbies in the server.
um,
Some of the newbies. Some of the newbies.
some of the newbie. Oh, there's plenty of those. That's not a bad thing. Um, speaker. Generally speaking, what you're going to see of the speaker is that they keep order in the chamber. Ultimately, they call up members to debate motions, bills, and/or put forward questions to ministers, and/or put forward a question on a motion or whatever. Um, Ultimately, the speaker directs that debate, keeps the debate flowing, obviously calls votes and whatever, and keeps order. I have to emphasize those two words there. They keep order. Ultimately, if a member's going to step out of line, the speaker has every right to throw them out if they keep on doing it. Of course, we've already had one member ejected this term from the chamber, which again, people get ejected. It happens. But obviously, what we don't want is lots of members doing that and it becoming a problem on like one side of the house more than the other or something like that. We don't want it to become a widespread problem. So it's my job as speaker to make sure that that doesn't become a problem, and that if it does become a problem, then it is solved as quickly as possible. Um, but it's also, I think, speaker's responsibility to ensure that MPs actually know what they're doing and that they are actually receiving like development in their skills and knowledge and whatnot, because there is obviously a lot of MPs who enter Parliament now and they really don't know what's going on. And I don't think the system is really, and like the Discord and whatever, none of it's really presented in a manner of which that enables new MPs and people involved in politics to really like go out and learn. You just kind of have to go around and ask people to learn anything, which is a bit bothersome. So that needs to change. I'm hoping to do that as speaker. So there's a bit of an educationary role as well as an authoritative role there.
So, Dean, I want to also ask that a very important question. So far as speaker, which party has been the most, taking the mick in Irish terms, basically messing around? Which party has been messing around the most in Parliament as of the start of this term?
Well, I should preface this by saying, "Oh, take a shot whenever I say that." But no, really, I should start this by saying, um, I think all the parties have their own, they have their own quirks. Obviously, they have their own unique sense of self, and you can certainly see that in Parliament, both last term and obviously slowly in this term. But of course, one important thing to remember is it's very early as of the time I'm saying this. So, in terms of which party has taken the mix so far, based off the statistics that I have, in hand, that would be probably the main opposition party Forward, in that they have had one MP ejected so far, and no other party has had that kind of ejection. There's been MPs across the chamber that have obviously been warned occasionally, but Social Democrat MPs and pirates and whatnot. But in terms of the actual statistics I have in front of me, of course, one MP has been ejected, and that was a Forward MP. So if you want an answer, there you go. But of course, it's way too early to, I think, sort of slag off parties for it right now. Ask me by like week 4, and I can probably give you a bit more of a definitive answer on which side of the chamber, I suppose, obviously is a little bit more unruly than others. But it
Uh,
happens.
so,
Whatever.
so Dean, I actually do have some questions from ordinary people on Westbridge who want
Oh,
to ask you, as a seasoned politician, your views on certain issues, and also, generally looking at, coalitions and all that stuff. So, I got one question here saying, as of right now, we've seen a bit of chaos between the Pirates, the Social Democrats, and the Unionists. Do you expect an election either by the end of this month or early April?
I will say now that obviously I can't be too partisan in my answers here, or partisan at all,
Mhm.
but in terms of the likelihood of an election, I do not see one happening in the foreseeable future. I think from uh, even from a parliamentary perspective and a public perspective, there is nothing happening in government that would otherwise cause a collapse that's meaningful enough to cause a vote of no confidence, or the Prime Minister, Michael Rothschild, to invoke, call another election. There's nothing like that happening right now, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen, and there's no indication that's going to happen. So I think another election before the scheduled one, which will be in May, is highly unlikely.
Okay, and another question is, who was the worst UK Prime Minister?
Um, Worst UK Prime Minister? God. I mean, this is a. I'm gonna have to go really far back here. Actually, no, I don't have to go that far back. I'm gonna say Reba Astor, just because I think she's one of the worst party leaders this community's ever had on multiple occasions. And as much as I like her as a person, I she I don't think she was cut out for any sort of leadership position ever. I know I'm really I'm pissing on a grave there, but you asked the question, so I'm answering it.
Hmm.
But she was not great, and as prime minister, everyone else did the work for her, and she vanished and resigned halfway through, and then Steve took over again. So I was in exile during that period, but even I know that I don't know. She just wasn't great. Terrible prime minister, good person.
All right. So here's number 3. Um, why is Ford UK bad? Because some people, some of the newbies who actually did vote for you, Ford UK, want to ask you, why do you think Ford UK is just generally bad? If you
Mhm.
can't answer that, since you're speaker, we all
I
also understand.
I'll answer it as impartially as possible. Forwards obviously have caused controversy by virtue of Persian not being a not so good individual who not only committed horrific acts against a member of this community by doxing them and whatever, and being a safeguarding risk, who thankfully is gone now, and that should never be repeated again. Other than that, which is outside the purview of politics in this community and the role play side, Forwards generally, I think a lot of they get a lot of their reputation, I think, from the complete lack of experience and knowledge within that party. It was a very populistic sort of big tent creation by obviously Persian and George Godsend and whatever, that was obviously used as a political machine for them to try and get into power. Um, you know, for the ill of the community. And obviously, Forward was the machine for them to achieve that, and it was at the cost, I think, of a lot of they wanted loyalists, they wanted people who could basically say, "Sir, yes, sir." And those people tend to not be the most experienced in the political side of things. They tend to be very sort of rogue-esque, which is why you have groups like UKFO and whatnot being accused of affiliation, and let's be honest, they're being affiliated with Forward, at least during Persian's time. So that I think that's where they get their
Speaking of the
reputation from.
UKFO,
Um,
speaking of the UKFO,
oh yes.
um, so if there was a member of parliament who was a member of the UKFO, would that, what would happen if a member of parliament was discovered to be a member of this terrorist organization?
Well, um, first of all, UKFO. I mean, they're not. I don't think they've not officially been designated a terror organization. They're just an
Well, I mean,
OCG.
they're shooting people on the streets every
They
single time
are,
someone
um, but
they're
they're an
causing so much.
OCG. I just want to legally sort of define that, just for my sake mostly. But UKFO. If in terms of like a member of parliament or an MP being a member of UKFO, the group ID for the UKFO group is banned now from the parliament game because they did try and cause disruption during the state opening, which that's not on. I'm going to. I mean, the clerks are going to uphold the ban anyway. I very much intend to. I'm not changing that anytime soon. Fuck around, find out. UKFO acted like stupid idiots. Stick to shooting people up on Westbridge. Don't try and disrupt parliamentary proceedings. Like that's a given. So if a member was part of UKFO, one, they probably wouldn't be able to join the game in the first place, which would be a bit of a tell. And number two, if they were a secret member, then I don't necessarily know what the procedure would be for that. There is currently a bill that I think is in Parliament. I think the Lords did vote against it, though. That would make it, I think, pretty much not impossible for a UKFO member to be a member of Parliament legally. But yeah,
Well,
either way,
it
yeah.
is sad that the Lords constantly see to destroy legislation, even though sometimes every party agrees to it. I mean,
I'm
it's very
not.
sad.
I'm not the biggest defender of the Lords here, but I will. I'm going to say now that the Lords do usually have very good reasons to, delay bills. It should be remembered that the government ultimately can force through bills if they really want to. Under the current procedures, a King's Speech bill, meaning that a piece of legislation that is written down on the King's Speech, that is obviously read out at the start of every new term during the state opening, a government can sort of force through that bill as long as they take on a Lord's amendment at some point during that process. So the Lords, again, that's one half of Parliament there that absolutely should be given a say on legislation, and they're ultimately there as a check and balance. They are there to try and improve the state of bills, and there's again a lot of good individuals in that chamber, and a lot of good friends and people who have written lots of bills for this community and people who have voted on a lot of bills in this community and done a lot of parliamentary work in their time. And a lot of experts from even outside the political community are there to comment on, Met bills, ambulance bills, um, you know, anything regarding the civil service or the media sector. You get the point. So, you know, the Lords are fine. I'm pretty sure I said something similar the other day, but the Lords are fine. I think they get a lot of. I mean, I used to give them a lot of flack when I was in government and my bills were getting defeated, but I think they're in a good shape. They were good shape then, and they're in a good shape now. I think governments should hear them out. Governments should press the Lords for answers and say, "What would you like us to amend? What would you like us to change?" That amendment gets done, and then it cruises through. But Lords very rarely try and destroy a bill for the sake of it. Like that's very rare. That just doesn't really happen. Maybe in the past, but not really anymore. Those kind of personal vendettas don't come out now. And there's so many peers now. I think it has hit the limit. It's like 35 peers now, or something like that. Actually, no, I don't think it's 35. I can't remember. But there's a lot of peers now. They, my point is that that wouldn't be the only reason to fail a bill. So I'm going to defend the Lords there.
So, Dean, I think this might have to be one of our last questions.
Yep.
'Cause we do need to wrap it up. So, I think some people now the most asked question was, is there any way the entire opposition, say the Social Democrats, Nationals, and Ford UK, were to who that they wanted to bring the government down? Could they have a theoretical path of doing that?
In order to pass a vote of no confidence in the government, I do believe I think it's 2/3 still. Is it 2/3 or is it 3/5? Can't remember now. We'll need to check the standing orders on that. But back in my time, you needed to have basically 2/3 of the chamber to vote down, like to vote no confidence in a government. Um, so theoretically, the leader of the opposition could propose a motion of no confidence, and then a vote would take place, and the government could theoretically be removed. But I just don't really see that happening right now. The Social Democrats, of course, are supplying confidence to the government, and I do not really see that changing. The pirates and unionists seem to get along, and I do not see the avenue for Forward or the Nationals to proceed with that really. And considering that there is you need a supermajority to pass a motion of no confidence, I do not think that would be happening in the foreseeable future, really.
Well, thank you, Dean, for coming on to the show. And ladies and gentlemen, that has been Dean Heathcote, the Speaker of the House, and I hope you enjoyed this interview.